It was almost midnight when I decided to take the long drive home. I had spent the whole evening helping a friend move out of his apartment in another town, and by the time we were done, my body was tired and my mind was foggy. The route back home was around 2.5 hours through mostly empty back roads that cut through long stretches of farmland and forest. I didn't want to wait until morning because I had work early, so I figured I'd just drive slow, listen to some music, and make it home before 3 a.m. As soon as I got onto the rural highway, I realized how dark it actually was out there. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the black. The road stretched out endlessly in front of me, straight as a ruler, with occasional faded signs and rusted mailboxes flashing by on the side. There were no streetlights, no other cars, just the hum of my tires on the asphalt and the faint rattle of the loose coins in my cup holder. The night air outside was cold, and when I cracked the window slightly, I could smell the faint scent of wet grass and dirt. For the first hour or so, it was fine. I had the radio on low volume, just enough to keep me awake. But as I got deeper into the back roads, the signal began to fade, leaving only static. I turned it off completely and let the sound of the engine keep me company. I started to notice every little thing, the flickering of my headlights when I hit a bump, the way my shadow moved across the dashboard when I passed a reflective sign, the squeak of the wipers when I tried to clean a streak off the windshield. Then I noticed a car behind me. I didn't even see it coming at first. I just caught the faint glow of headlights in my rearview mirror, far in the distance. It was the first car I'd seen in over an hour. I figured it was someone else heading home late like me. But as I kept driving, I realized that no matter how fast or slow I went, the headlights stayed the same distance behind me. I wasn't going too fast, just under the speed limit, but the car didn't try to pass. It just stayed back there, maybe a few hundred feet behind, keeping pace. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they were nervous about passing at night or didn't know the road well. But as the minutes stretched on, I started to feel uneasy. I turned off onto another road, one that cut across a series of old farms, hoping they'd keep going straight. But when I checked the mirror again, the headlights followed. The road I was on now was rough and narrow, barely wide enough for 2 cars. Patches of broken asphalt made my car bounce slightly. I tried to focus on the drive, telling myself I was being paranoid, but my hands started to tighten on the steering wheel. Every turn I made, every slow stretch, that car behind me made the exact same moves, always keeping the same distance. After about 15 minutes of this, I decided to pull off to the side for a bit. I thought maybe if I stopped, they'd pass and I could go back to driving in peace. I slowed down near a wide shoulder where the edge of a field met the road, put on my hazard lights, and rolled to a stop. The car behind me slowed down too. I waited, expecting it to pull around and pass, but instead, it also came to a stop, maybe 50 yards back. I felt a chill go through me. I couldn't see the driver or make out the type of car. It was just a pair of bright headlights aimed directly at my mirrors. The glare filled my car. I turned off my own lights for a moment, trying to see if maybe it was someone I knew or a local farmer, but I couldn't make out a thing through the brightness. I sat there for about 30 seconds, then put my car back into drive and started moving again. The moment I pulled back onto the road, the car behind me did the same. I could feel my heart beating faster. My phone barely had a signal out there, just 1 bar flickering on and off, so calling anyone wasn't much of an option. I tried to calm myself down. I told myself maybe they were just nervous about the area or maybe their GPS was leading them the same way. But after another half hour, they were still behind me. The road eventually passed through a stretch of thick forest, the kind where the trees form a dark tunnel around you. I realized if something happened there, nobody would see or hear a thing. My headlights barely lit up the twisting road ahead, and I could see the fog starting to roll in between the trees. My car's clock said 1:47 a.m. At this point, I was getting desperate to lose them. I remembered there was a small gas station about 20 miles ahead that stayed open all night. I'd been there once before. I decided I wouldn't stop until I reached it. I kept my speed steady, ignoring the urge to look back every few seconds. When I finally saw the faint glow of lights in the distance, it felt like relief. The gas station's bright white signs stood out like a beacon. I pulled into the lot fast, parking right in front near the doors under the security lights. The car behind me slowed down as it approached, but this time it didn't pull in. Kept going, driving right past the station and disappearing down the dark stretch of road. I sat there for a while, my hands shaking, watching the red taillights fade away into the night. Inside the car, it was dead silent. I turned off the engine and just sat there, staring out the window. My reflection looked pale and tired. I waited another 10 minutes before getting out. The cold air hit me hard, and I stretched my stiff legs before going inside to buy a drink and calm down. I remember how the buzzing fluorescent lights inside felt too bright compared to the darkness outside. After about 20 minutes, I went back to my car, thinking maybe it was safe to continue. The roads were still and empty again. I felt a bit stupid for how scared I'd gotten, but deep down, something still didn't feel right. When I finally got home, I parked in the driveway and sat for a few seconds before turning off the car. The neighborhood was quiet, all the houses dark except for one porch light flickering down the street. As I stepped out, I looked down at the back of my car, and my stomach dropped. My rear bumper was smeared with what looked like mud, or at least I thought it was mud at first. But when I looked closer under the porch light, it wasn't mud. It was a handprint. A full handprint streaked across the back of my trunk, fingers dragged downward. It wasn't there earlier. I know because I had loaded my car in bright daylight, and it was clean then. The print was large, too big to be mine, and it was slightly smeared like someone had grabbed onto it and slipped. I touched it carefully. It was tacky, like half-dried dirt mixed with oil. It had a faint smell, almost like rusted metal. My first thought was that maybe when I stopped earlier on the roadside, someone had come up behind my car. The realization made me sick. Maybe they'd been following me the entire time, getting close whenever I slowed down. Maybe when I stopped with my hazard lights on, they'd actually gotten out and touched the car. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about how long that car had followed me, how it never tried to pass, how it stopped when I stopped. I replayed it all over and over, trying to make sense of it. I even went outside around 3 a.m. to check if the print was still there. It was. The next morning, I washed my car in daylight. The handprint left a faint shadow behind, a greasy outline that wouldn't completely come off no matter how hard I scrubbed. I told myself it was probably just a stranger on the same road, someone who maybe stopped behind me for some reason. But deep down, the thought that someone might have been right behind my car, watching me in the dark, pressing their hand against my trunk while I sat inside with my hazard lights blinking, that thought never left my mind. Since that night, I haven't driven that route again. I still take the long way home even if it adds an hour. It's better than feeling that creeping sense of being followed through the middle of nowhere. Sometimes when I'm driving at night, I still find myself checking the mirror too often, half expecting to see a pair of headlights keeping the same distance, not passing, not slowing down, just following. It was just after midnight when I started the long drive home from a warehouse job in the next state. I'd worked a double shift and my whole body ached, but I just wanted my own bed. The road back home was almost entirely highway, long, open stretches of asphalt cutting through farmland and empty lots of pine trees. It was one of those nights where the world felt still and hollow, like the air itself had fallen asleep. I'd been on the road maybe an hour when I realized how completely alone I was out there. My headlights cut through the darkness, showing nothing but the faint white lines of the lane and the tall grass at the edges. Every once in a while, a green reflective sign would flash by, and then it was back to black. My radio was barely working, just faint static and the occasional broken bit of some late-night country song. I could feel the tiredness building behind my eyes, that fuzzy kind of exhaustion that makes everything feel a little unreal. I didn't see another car for miles, until suddenly, a set of red taillights appeared far ahead. It was a semi. It looked huge against the darkness, its trailer reflecting my headlights in small, bright strips. I felt a weird sense of relief seeing it. Truckers, I'd always thought, were either the nicest people on the road or the scariest ones you could ever meet. There was no middle ground. I'd met a few good ones, helpful, polite, the kind who'd pull over if you were stranded. But I'd also read stories about the other kind, the ones who hunted lonely highways at night. I sped up a little to close the distance. The truck was hauling a plain white trailer, no company name or logos on it, just blank white metal with faint streaks of dirt. Its brake lights flickered every now and then, like the driver was tapping the pedal, maybe fighting fatigue like I was. I stayed behind it for a while, matching its speed, letting it lead the way. After maybe 15 minutes, I noticed something strange. There was another set of lights behind me. They were small at first, faint and distant. I didn't think much of it until they started gaining fast. Within a minute, they were close enough that I could tell it was another semi. The headlights filled my rearview mirror, blindingly bright, way too close for comfort. I kept my speed steady, waiting for it to pass, but it didn't. It stayed right on my bumper, the lights burning into my eyes through the mirror. I could see the front grille of the truck, the shape of its cab, the massive chrome bars gleaming in my taillights. I couldn't even see the driver, just darkness behind the glass. For a few minutes, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the driver was impatient. Maybe they'd back off. But they didn't. They just stayed there, too close, matching every move I made. I flicked my eyes back to the road ahead. The first truck was still in front of me, holding steady at the same speed. The second truck behind me kept tailing me so close I could feel the vibration of its engine through the air. I was boxed in now. Two massive vehicles, one in front, one behind, both running steady and silent through the black night. The thought crept into my head slowly, and I tried to push it away. This feels planned. I eased off the gas a little, thinking maybe the truck behind me would just pass. Instead, the brake lights on the truck in front of me glowed red as it slowed down, matching my speed drop perfectly. I sped up, and both trucks sped up with me. The road was empty except for us. No exits, no towns, no streetlights. Just endless black highway and the faint hiss of wind through the crack in my window. That's when my chest started to tighten. Every instinct told me something was wrong. I tried to stay calm, but my hands were slick on the steering wheel. I could see every small movement in my mirrors, every flash of reflection from the headlights behind me. I turned off my cruise control and took full control of the gas pedal. After a few more minutes of this, I decided I had to get out of the situation somehow. Up ahead, I noticed a small green reflective sign. An exit ramp was coming up. It led toward a service road that probably cut through some farmland. It wasn't much, but it was something. I waited until the last second, then flicked my turn signal and pulled onto the ramp. The truck behind me followed immediately, turning sharply onto the same exit. My stomach dropped. I accelerated hard, tires squealing slightly on the curve. The truck in front stayed straight, continuing down the main highway, its taillights fading into the dark. But the one behind me, he stayed right on me. The ramp led down to a narrow two-lane road with no lights at all. The pavement looked old and cracked, with grass growing up through the edges. I drove faster than I should have, watching the mirrors constantly. The truck's headlights stayed close behind, not backing off even as I hit 80 on a road meant for 40. The road curved sharply, and I nearly lost control, my tires skimming the gravel shoulder before I pulled it back. The truck slowed slightly to take the turn, and that gave me a small lead. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that truck. After another few miles, I saw something ahead, a small gas station sign glowing weakly in the dark. The building itself was half hidden behind trees, with only 2 pumps and a flickering overhead light. I didn't even think. I just swerved in, braking hard. I pulled up beside the pumps and shut off my headlights. My heart was slamming in my chest as I waited. The truck came around the bend a few seconds later. It slowed down as it passed the gas station. For a moment, I thought it was going to turn in too, but it didn't. It kept going, the roar of its engine fading slowly into the night. I stayed there for several minutes, breathing hard, staring out at the road. The quiet felt unreal. The only sound was the faint buzzing of the light above the pumps. My hands were trembling, and I could feel the sweat cooling on my face. Eventually, I stepped out of the car. The night air was cold, and the smell of fuel and dirt hung in the air. I looked both ways down the road, nothing but darkness. No more headlights, no movement. I went inside the small building attached to the pumps. The place was old and half abandoned, but a vending machine in the corner was still lit up, humming quietly. I stood there for a while, trying to calm down. My legs felt weak, my mouth dry. I hadn't realized until then how close I'd come to panic. After about 15 minutes, I went back to my car. I sat behind the wheel and just stared at the steering column, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't know what that trucker wanted. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he thought I was someone else. Or maybe it was exactly what it felt like. Someone playing with me, testing me, waiting for a quiet stretch of road with no lights and no witnesses. When I finally got back on the highway, I took the next exit toward a larger town. I stayed in well-lit areas, near other cars, avoiding any empty stretches. Every set of headlights behind me made my stomach clench. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see that same pair of bright lights closing in again. I made it home just before dawn. The sky was turning pale blue, and the world felt calm again, almost normal. But that drive stuck in my head. Every time I thought about it, my chest would tighten the same way. A few days later, I read online about a string of highway assaults in the same region. Truckers who picked out lone drivers late at night, running them off the road, robbing them, sometimes worse. They were still looking for the people responsible. It made sense then. The unmarked trailer, the way they boxed me in, the timing of how they followed me off the highway. I'd probably come close to being one of those stories. Now, whenever I drive long distances at night, I never let my gas tank get low, and I always plan stops ahead of time. And when I see a semi behind me in my mirror, I never forget that feeling. How some of them are the kindest people you'll ever meet, but others are the reason you should never trust the open road completely. Because out there, in the dark, there's no middle ground. Truckers are either the ones who'll save your life or the ones who'll take it. And the only difference between the two is luck, and whether or not you make the right turn when it really counts. It was around midnight when I started the long drive back home. My wife and I had spent the day out of town visiting family, and by the time we finally got on the highway, the air had that still, heavy feeling that only comes late at night. The kind of quiet where every sound in the car stands out. The soft hum of the tires, the low whistle of wind sneaking through the door seals, the faint clicking of the turn signal whenever I changed lanes. The highway was a divided two-lane stretch that ran straight for miles through open farmland. On both sides of the road, fields stretched into total darkness, with only a few scattered farmhouse lights flickering in the distance. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the night felt darker than usual, like the whole world had been swallowed in black. My wife leaned against the window, half asleep, her seat reclined just a little. I could feel the tiredness creeping into my own body too, that dull, heavy feeling behind my eyes that comes from driving too long. Traffic was light, just a few semis spaced far apart, hauling their loads through the night. I always trusted truck drivers more than regular ones. They seemed steady, experienced, predictable. When I came up behind a pair of them driving close together, I figured I'd just pass and get back into the right lane. The first semi was hauling a flatbed trailer stacked with lumber, the metal straps glinting faintly in my headlights. The second was pulling an enclosed trailer, probably refrigerated. Both were doing about 5 miles under the limit, so I flicked on my left signal, checked the mirror, and eased over to pass. The road was smooth, wide, and empty ahead. As I passed, the noise of my car echoed faintly off the tall sides of the trailer beside me. For a moment, it felt like being inside a tunnel. I could see the reflection of my headlights bouncing off the silver trim of the truck's rear doors. Everything felt normal, routine. When I got past the first truck, I did a quick shoulder check to make sure the lane was clear before merging back over. That's when I saw it. Headlights, not behind me, directly ahead of me in my lane. Bright, blinding, and closing the distance fast. It took me half a second to understand what I was looking at. A car was coming toward me, driving the wrong way down the highway. For that split second, the world seemed to slow down. My hands froze on the wheel. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. Then instinct took over. I swerved hard to the right, cutting back into the lane beside the semi, barely missing the side of its trailer. The sound of my tires screeching filled the car, followed by the rush of wind as we left the pavement and slammed down into the ditch beside the road. The impact was brutal. The car jolted violently, throwing everything forward. The seatbelt dug into my chest, and my wife let out a scream so raw that it still echoes in my head when I think about it. It was the sound of pure terror, the sound someone makes when they think it's the end. For a moment, I thought that was it, that the next sound would be the crunch of metal and glass. But it never came. We skidded sideways through the ditch, dirt and grass spraying up across the windshield, and finally came to a stop facing sideways, headlights shining into a field. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like my chest might burst. My hands were locked around the steering wheel, and my breathing came in fast, uneven bursts. I could smell burned rubber, dirt, and something hot coming from under the hood. I sat there for a few seconds, completely frozen, listening to the ticking of the engine and the faint sound of wind outside. When I looked back at the road, I saw the two semis pulling over to the shoulder. Their brake lights glowed red through the darkness, the engine still rumbling as they slowed down. I didn't see the wrong way car anymore, just darkness ahead. Whoever it was, they were gone. I tried to pull myself together, but my arms were shaking so badly that I could barely move. My wife was gripping the edge of her seat, still in shock, her breathing heavy and uneven. The silence that followed felt unbearable. It was the kind of silence that makes every small sound echo. My heartbeat, the faint ticking from the cooling engine, the distant hum of the truck's diesel motors idling on the shoulder. After a minute or two, one of the semis edged forward, its headlights sweeping across the ditch where we sat. Then it stopped completely. The second one stayed behind it. I didn't get out right away. I just sat there, still gripping the wheel, trying to process what had happened. Those drivers had seen everything. They must have watched that car come out of nowhere, heading the wrong way, barely missing all of us. Eventually, I killed the engine and climbed out. The cold air hit me like a slap. The ground under my shoes was soft and uneven, the grass damp with dew. I could see the tracks where my car had torn through the ditch, long, deep grooves of churned dirt. The truck's headlights lit up the road like stadium lights, cutting through the darkness. One of the drivers stood near the edge of the shoulder, looking down toward us. He didn't come close, probably just making sure we were alive. I gave a small wave to show we were okay, and after a few minutes, both trucks eased back onto the road and continued on. Their taillights faded into the distance until there was nothing left but the dark again. I climbed back into the car, shut the door, and just sat there, staring straight ahead. My heart was still pounding, and every time I blinked, I saw those headlights again. Bright white beams racing straight toward me, so close that it made my whole body tense up even now. I kept thinking about how close it had been. A few inches, a few seconds. That was all that separated us from dying right there on that highway. I started the car again and slowly drove back up onto the shoulder. The bumper scraped against the edge of the ditch, and for a second I thought we'd get stuck. But the tires gripped and pulled us back onto the pavement. The right front fender was covered in mud, and the undercarriage made a faint grinding noise when I turned the wheel. I didn't care. I just wanted to be moving again, to put distance between me and that spot. We drove slowly, my hands still trembling on the wheel. The road felt endless, stretching ahead in perfect black lines. I kept my eyes locked on the opposite lane, terrified I'd see another car coming the wrong way. Every set of headlights in the distance made my chest tighten. About 15 minutes later, I saw a gas station glowing faintly on the side of the highway. I pulled in without even thinking. The lights from the pumps cast a pale, artificial glow across the lot, and the quiet hum of the fluorescent signs felt strangely comforting. I parked near the door, shut off the engine, and just sat there. My wife didn't say a word. Her hands were still trembling. I stepped out of the car and leaned against the hood. The metal was still warm. The night air was cold and sharp, and I could see my breath in front of me. My legs felt weak, like they couldn't hold my weight. I stood there for a long time, staring out at the empty highway. Every few minutes, a car would pass, its headlights streaking by in the distance, and every single time, I felt that jolt of fear in my chest. I checked the front of the car. Mud packed into the grille, grass tangled around the bumper, and a long scratch along the passenger side from some part of the ditch. It didn't matter. We were alive. That was the only thing that mattered. The realization hit me hard. We could have been dead. Just like that, one wrong turn from a stranger, 1 second of delay from me, and we'd be gone. No warning, no time to react. After maybe 20 minutes, I finally got back in the car. I gripped the wheel tighter than before, driving slower, eyes scanning every inch of road ahead. The highway was quiet again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there. Some careless driver speeding away into the night, completely unaware that they'd almost killed 2 people. When we finally got home, it was nearly 3 in the morning. The street was silent, every house dark. I parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there for a long time before getting out. My hands were still trembling when I closed the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the faint hum of cars passing in the distance, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights again. I saw that flash of white filling the windshield and the way the world seemed to narrow down to a single second where everything depended on what I did next. The next morning, I went outside and looked at the car in the daylight. The dirt on the sides, the deep grooves in the front bumper, it all looked worse than I remembered. I traced one of the scratches with my hand and felt a strange chill run through me, because I realized that every mark on that car was proof of how close we came to never making it home. It's been a long time since that night, but I still think about those semis pulling over. It was something small, but it mattered. They didn't have to stop. They didn't have to care, but they did. And knowing that there were still people out there who looked out for others, even in the middle of nowhere at 1 in the morning, somehow made that night a little less dark. Now, every time I drive at night, I'm different. I check my mirrors constantly. I watch every set of headlights. I keep both hands on the wheel, because I know how fast everything can end. Just one moment of luck and 2 strangers in trucks might be the only reason I'm still here to tell it. It's been 7 years since that fall, but I can still remember every second of it like it just happened. The smell of pine needles crushed under my boots, the way the morning fog hung low over the ridge, the sound of the wind cutting through the trees, all of it burned into my memory. I'd been on that same trail more times than I could count. I used to think I knew it better than anyone. I'd hiked it in summer heat, in pouring rain, even once in the snow. It was the kind of place that made you feel at peace, far away from everything else in the world. But that morning, something felt off from the start. I remember the air being colder than usual, that kind of chill that seeps through your jacket and into your bones. The forest was still, quiet enough that every crunch of gravel under my boots sounded loud. The sun was trying to break through the fog, spilling weak light across the trees. I didn't think much of it. It was just another day, another hike I'd done dozens of times before. I was in good shape back then, confident, moving quickly through the switchbacks. The trail wound along the side of a steep hill, with one side climbing upward into thick brush and the other dropping off into a long slope of jagged rocks and dirt. There was a narrow bend I always remembered, a small section of trail that forced you to walk close to the edge before it widened again. I passed it many times without a problem. But that day, when I reached it, something strange happened. My boots were dry, the ground didn't look slick, but as soon as I stepped forward, my foot shot out from under me like the dirt had turned to ice. There was no warning, no time to grab onto anything. For a second, I saw the world tilt sideways, the trees and sky spinning together. Then I was falling. The feeling was unreal. The rush of air, the sound of branches snapping around me, the sharp crack of my shoulder hitting something hard. My body rolled, tumbled, slammed against rock after rock until I finally came to a stop in a patch of wet leaves at the bottom of the slope. The pain was so sharp it almost didn't feel real. I tried to breathe, but my chest wouldn't move right. My right arm was twisted, my shoulder dislocated, and when I looked down, my left ankle was bent in a way that made my stomach turn. The forest around me was silent except for the distant whisper of wind through the trees. I could smell dirt, wet bark, and blood. My ears rang so loud it felt like I was underwater. I don't know how long I lay there before the pain started to fully set in, deep and heavy, pulsing through every nerve. When I tried to move, I couldn't. My whole body felt foreign, broken in too many places to understand. I wanted to yell, but the only thing that came out was a low groan. Time started to lose meaning after that. The light above me shifted from bright to dim, then back again, like clouds were passing overhead. I must have blacked out because when I opened my eyes, it was raining. Cold, steady rain soaking through my clothes, filling the air with the smell of wet earth. I was lying face down in the mud, and I could feel the water pooling around me. Everything hurt. My right arm hung uselessly at my side, my left ankle throbbing with every beat of my heart. Then I heard something move behind me. It wasn't the wind, it was slower, heavier. The sound of something walking. My body tensed, but I couldn't turn to look. Whatever it was came closer, slow and cautious, the way animals move when they're not sure what they found. I could hear it breathing, short huffs, sniffing the air. Then I felt the pressure of something nudging my shoulder, the warmth of its breath against my neck. My mind was racing, maybe a deer, maybe a coyote. I didn't know. I tried to stay still, but the pain was unbearable, and a small sound escaped my throat. A low, broken moan. That was all it took. The animal bolted so fast that I could hear branches snapping and dirt scattering as it disappeared into the trees. I was left alone again, the rain pounding harder now, the cold sinking deeper into my bones. I could taste blood in my mouth and feel my body starting to shake uncontrollably. That's when survival finally kicked in. I knew if I stayed there, I'd die. Not from the injuries, but from the cold. I started crawling. My right arm was useless, so I used my left to pull myself forward, dragging my broken leg behind me. Every movement sent a wave of pain through my body, but I kept going. The rain turned the dirt into thick, slippery mud, and my clothes were so heavy they clung to my skin like wet cement. My breathing grew ragged, shallow. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I don't know how long I crawled. It felt endless. Just mud, rain, and pain. I stopped a few times to rest my head on the ground, eyes half closed, the forest spinning around me. At one point, I thought I saw light through the trees, but it was just lightning flashing far off in the distance. Still, I kept going. In. Finally, after what must have been hours, I saw something ahead. A wooden post, half hidden by overgrowth. It took me a minute to realize what it was. A trail marker. Somehow, I'd crawled back to a lower section of the trail. The relief hit me so hard I almost cried. I dragged myself the last few feet until I was lying half on the path, half in the mud. I remember the sound of footsteps after that, steady and fast. Then a figure appeared, wearing a bright jacket, moving toward me. I couldn't make out their face through the rain, but I saw the flash of a radio, heard the faint static of a voice coming through. The ranger knelt beside me, her hands moving quickly, checking my pulse, wrapping my leg, securing my arm in a sling. She gave me water, adjusted something around my neck to keep me still, and stayed there with me until help arrived. When the helicopter came, the sound filled the forest, that deep, chopping rhythm that vibrated through the ground. The rain blew sideways from the rotor wash as they lowered the stretcher. I remember being lifted, the cold air rushing against my face, the trees shrinking below. I don't remember much after that until I woke up in the hospital. The doctors told me I'd dislocated my right shoulder and elbow, fractured my ankle, and had a mild concussion. They said I was lucky the ranger found me when she did. If she hadn't, I probably wouldn't have made it through the night. It took months of recovery, surgeries, physical therapy, endless nights lying awake feeling the dull ache of bones and muscles healing. Even after I got better, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The slip, the fall, the feeling of free fall with nothing to grab onto. I replayed it over and over in my head, trying to figure out what caused it. Maybe a loose rock, maybe just a patch of slick dirt. I'll never know. Now, 7 years later, I still go back to that trail. Not often, but every once in a while. It's strange walking it again, knowing what happened there, knowing how close I came to not walking away at all. The section where I fell looks the same. Quiet, calm, harmless. There's no sign that anything ever happened. No scar in the earth, no broken branches. The forest healed itself like it always does, but I can still feel the weight of that moment when I stand there. The edge of the trail, the empty drop below, the smell of rain in the air. I always stop there for a few minutes before moving on. Sometimes I think about how thin that line is between life and death, how one slip, one step too far, can change everything. It doesn't scare me anymore, not the way it used to. It just reminds me that even the places you know best can turn on you in an instant. Every time I go back, I walk slower. I pay more attention. The ground feels different under my boots now, less forgiving. The wind sounds sharper through the trees. I never rush it. I move carefully, step by step, always aware of how close I came to never leaving that forest at all. And every time I finish the hike and make it back to my truck, I sit there for a while, looking up at the ridge through the trees, thinking about that day. I still don't know what caused me to slip, but I know what it taught me. That no matter how familiar something feels, it can still surprise you. Nature doesn't owe you anything. You can walk the same trail 100 times, and one day it'll remind you just how small you really are. It was close to midnight when I started my drive home from a small town about 2 hours away. I had gone there for a quick job, helping a guy I knew move some equipment for his auto shop. I hadn't planned to stay that late, but time slipped away, and by the time I got back on the road, the streets were completely empty. I took the long way home, an old state highway that cut through miles of flat farmland and patches of woods, because it was quicker than the main interstate, even if it felt more isolated. The sky was completely black that night. No moon, no stars, just layers of clouds that made it feel like I was driving under a lid. My headlights were the only thing breaking through the dark, and the white lines on the road looked faded and cracked. Every few miles, I'd pass an old barn or a long-abandoned farmhouse, their shapes barely visible in the distance. The air was cold, and my car heater made a faint ticking noise every few minutes. I remember that sound clearly because everything else was dead quiet. About 20 minutes into the drive, I saw something on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a broken-down car, but when I got closer, I realized it was a pickup truck pulled halfway off the shoulder. Its hazard lights weren't on, and its driver's door was wide open. The headlights were still on, shining into a field, but I couldn't see anyone around. I slowed down a little as I passed, glancing out my window, but there was nobody inside. Just an empty driver's seat and a few items scattered on the ground nearby. I didn't stop. I figured someone had gone to get help or was using the bathroom in the field. But even after I drove another mile or two, something about it felt wrong. The way the truck door hung open, the engine running, lights still on, it didn't look like someone had left it intentionally. I told myself not to think about it and kept driving. The road stretched out for miles without a single curve, nothing but black fields on both sides. My high beams lit up the yellow lines ahead, and every now and then, I saw small animals darting across the road, mostly rabbits or raccoons. I kept a steady speed and tried to keep my mind off that truck. But maybe 15 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me in the mirror. They were faint at first, way back in the distance. I didn't think much of it, but as time went on, they got closer. I expected the car to pass me, but it didn't. It just stayed behind me, maybe a few 100 feet back, perfectly matching my speed. I wasn't driving slow either, just over the speed limit, but whoever it was kept up easily. The strange thing was, I hadn't seen any other car since I left town, and the road didn't have any major turnoffs. Whoever it was must have come from behind that parked truck, or from one of the few gravel roads that led into the fields. At one point, I slowed down a little, hoping they'd pass, but when I did, they slowed down too. I could feel my chest tightening. It didn't make sense for anyone to be out here this late, driving that way. I pressed on the gas and sped up slightly, putting some distance between us. For a while, the headlights faded back into the distance again. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, maybe another tired driver heading home. But after another 10 minutes, I looked back and saw those same headlights, still there, same distance, steady and unchanging. The road started to bend through a wooded area, the trees closing in on both sides. The branches hung over the road, blocking out any bit of light. My high beams caught the pale trunks of birch trees, the light flashing across them as I turned. I could feel my focus slipping. I was tired, my eyes burning from staring at the road for too long. I blinked hard a few times, rubbing my face, and when I looked back up, I saw something lying across the road ahead. It looked like a piece of lumber or maybe a fallen branch, but it stretched almost completely across my lane. I braked hard and came to a stop just a few feet in front of it. My heart was pounding. I flicked my high beams on and saw it more clearly. It wasn't a branch. It was a long strip of wood with nails hammered into it, spaced evenly across, like some kind of homemade spike strip. Behind me, I saw headlights again. The same car that had been following me. It was stopped a good distance back now, its lights still on, just sitting there. I didn't move for several seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. My instincts kicked in fast. I threw the car into reverse and started backing up slowly. As I did, the car behind me began moving forward, creeping toward me at a slow pace. My pulse was racing. I turned my wheel hard and backed into the narrow shoulder, bumping slightly over the edge of the asphalt. Then I gunned it forward, cutting around the spike strip by driving through the shallow ditch on the side. My tires kicked up dirt, and I felt the back end of the car slide slightly before I got back on the road. I didn't look back. I just pressed the gas as hard as I could. When I finally looked in the mirror again, the other car's headlights were gone. I didn't know if they had stopped, turned off, or maybe turned around, but I couldn't see them anymore. I didn't slow down for miles. My hands were gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. Every turn of the road felt like it was taking forever. I could still feel that rush of adrenaline running through me. Eventually, I came to a small gas station near a crossroads. The lights were dim, but it was open. I pulled in and parked near the pumps, my engine still running. My whole body was shaking, and I sat there for a long time, trying to calm down. I looked around the parking lot, checking every direction. No headlights, no movement, nothing but the soft hum of the fluorescent light above the gas pumps. After a few minutes, I got out and walked around my car, checking the tires. My front bumper was scratched and covered in dirt from when I had gone through the ditch, but otherwise, everything seemed fine. I looked down at the road leading back the way I came, and all I could think about was that wooden board with nails across it, and how it was just lying there in the middle of nowhere. Someone had put it there on purpose. That realization made everything click in a way that made my stomach turn. The abandoned truck, the headlights following me, the spike strip, it was all connected. Someone had been waiting out there, maybe planning to make someone stop, maybe to rob them, maybe worse. If I hadn't seen the nails in time, I would have blown out my tires and been stuck in the middle of the woods with no cell signal, waiting for help that wasn't coming. And whoever was behind me would have found me there. I waited at that gas station for a long time, at least half an hour, before deciding to take a completely different route home. The attendant barely looked up when I paid for a bottle of water, and I didn't say a word. I stayed on main roads the rest of the way, even though it added almost an hour to the drive. When I finally got home, the sun was just starting to rise. I parked in my driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there for a while, just staring at the empty street in front of my house. It felt strange, seeing everything so normal again after what had happened out there. That morning, I couldn't stop thinking about that truck. I thought about reporting it, but I didn't even know exactly where I had seen it. It had been somewhere along a stretch of road with no mile markers, just endless fields. I checked the local news for days afterward, but nothing came up. No mention of an abandoned truck or any kind of police activity out there. It still bothers me sometimes. How quiet that night was, how empty those roads felt, and how easily it could have gone differently. I think about that car following me, staying just far enough back that I couldn't see who was driving. I think about what might have happened if I'd stopped for that truck, or if I hadn't noticed the nails until it was too late. Now, every time I drive at night, especially on back roads, I can't relax. I keep checking the mirror over and over, watching for headlights that won't pass. I don't trust empty cars on the side of the road anymore. And whenever I see something lying across the lane, even a fallen branch, I slow down and keep my distance. Because once you've been out there, in that kind of dark, realizing how far you are from anyone who could help you, you never look at a quiet road the same way again.